Hello, and welcome to this little project. I recently received a request to automate a spreadsheet that is to retrieve certain data from different tabs based on user selections. What you're seeing on the screen now are the goals of the project and the desired functionality of the spreadsheet. I will go through that in a minute. But first I want to ask, do you know what a doc joke is? It is a knock-knock joke with a cold. Now that there is comedy gold. You're welcome. All right, enough tomfoolery. The reason I'm doing this project and recording it is because in my trainings in Excel, the most questions I received were along the lines of, how long did it take you to get so good at Excel? How long have you been doing Excel? How did you learn Excel in such a way that you could create such projects? It was always frustrating to get that question for a couple of reasons. One, I knew the question was being asked so that the person asking the question could give themselves an out from improving their Excel skills. Well, if it took you that much time, then there's no way I can do it because I do not have that much time. Not understanding that most of the Excel skills I picked up during work hours when working on spreadsheets. Two, I knew the answer I could give them was not useful. Basically, I just do it. I started out like everyone else, and it takes time. It is not like I just picked up Excel and within 24 hours I was able to tackle these kinds of projects. Basically, I have tackled these projects and I do a lot of research and learning from working on the projects. And the things I learned from one project I can use in future projects. So the question is, why do I take on such projects? One, because I'm lazy, so I do not want to be inputting a lot of data if I can avoid it. Two, a lot of data input risks input errors. Regardless of how great of a typist or a 10-keyer you might be, there's a chance you'll transpose numbers or make a typo. And even if that happens only 1% of the time, it is enough to cause problems in whatever analysis or report you're building. So there is a desire to automate data as much as possible. And three, I'm always thinking, there must be an easier way to do this, or there must be a way to do this so that I'm not doing rework repeatedly. Which gets back to my first point, which is that I'm lazy. Being lazy, I do not want to do the same work more than once. Every month, I do not want to create a monthly report from scratch, inputting the data for that report, as well as typing in all the words needed. Even copying the previous month's spreadsheet and just inputting the data, there's still a chance for errors. For example, if you have dates in a spreadsheet or names that change and you do not change those values, you have created unnecessary errors. For example, if you have dates in a spreadsheet or names that change and you do not change those values, you have created unnecessary errors. And those dates and names could be in the header or footer, which you do not see in the normal view until you print the document. And then you might miss the error in the header or footer once you print it because at a glance it looks right. Then you hand it out and people say, hey, why are you giving us April's data? And why does the data on this report for April look different than the report you gave us for April last month? What's going on? Are you incompetent? Are you hiding information from us? Are you lying to us? Etc., etc. So with that in mind, the goal is to build a project that addresses and reduces the risk of such errors occurring or from having to work lots of long hours manually preparing reports that can be automated. And doing that over my career, that is where I picked up the skills. Again, during my Excel trainings, when teaching different formulas or techniques, it was frustrating to see students fail to see a formula and think, oh, here's this formula. How might I apply it in one of my spreadsheets? There was a failure to see how the parts could fit in the whole. They would simply look at each formula separately on its own in the training and then discard it as useless because I didn't show how it could be used in their accounts payable spreadsheet or their payroll spreadsheet or their gambling tracking spreadsheet or their analysis of government economic data spreadsheet or whatever their specific spreadsheet was. And they would continue to create spreadsheets the hard way. With all this in mind, I thought I would take this project, which I've not really thought much about. I just received it. I read the requirements and I decided that, okay, I'm going to record myself completing this project step by step from the beginning to the end without any pre-research about how to solve any of these problems or doing any pre-planning or thinking about the project. And if I make mistakes, you'll see me make those mistakes and correct those mistakes. Hopefully, in an effort to show that as you are creating these kinds of spreadsheets, it is okay to make mistakes. You might make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The key is you just fix it. It's not a big deal to fix it. Or to think that the only way you're going to be successful in Excel is at the moment you start this project till when you are finished, that it will be completely flawless and that you are not going to make mistakes. Or that if you think you are going to make a mistake, or you're not sure how you're going to do this one certain thing at this moment in time, then you cannot get started as you have judged that it is going to be a failure or a mess. Having said all of that, I hope I do make mistakes. Otherwise, I'll fail in that part of the project. So I hope I make mistakes so you can see me make them and then correct them. And I'm hoping that if you follow me through this project, that it will help you to realize that you too can create such a project, and that you might see something that you realize that you could use in a spreadsheet that you're using or thinking of creating. So there is all that rambling setting up what this is about. So let's get to it. So as you can see on the screen, the goal is to make a payroll calculation sheet that will work for every classification. In this case, classification meaning job classification. With each classification, there is a salary schedule, so the payroll calculation sheet would need to work with each of those different salary schedules. The functionality. So it should involve multiple lookups to multiple differing salary schedules. And in this case, also when we're talking about salary schedules, each salary schedule is on a separate tab according to the spreadsheet that was sent to me. Number 2, they need to update salary schedules by downloading them from the payroll system. Number 3, choose a salary schedule and then select the appropriate salary schedule tab. From that tab, select the range and step and the amount due, and then return the values from step 3 into F7, which is here, from this information in M5 through M7. And then number 5, they want to add calculation formulas for every add-on in the tab and have them in a list in column F. So you can see the F here, column F here. So 6, based on the value from step 5, pull the corresponding formula into column H, which is here. One of the complications is that the add-on information must be in text in the add-ons tab, but need to actually do the calculations with the data. And that's because in the payroll software that this person is using, when they enter the formula into the add-on section of the software, they can't enter it as a formula. They enter it in a kind of a comment section as a text. And then when they download that from the payroll system into Excel, it is there as a text, and they need to convert that to an actual working formula. So when we say add-ons, what do we mean by that? So basically every employee receives an amount of money, a monthly amount or hourly rate, whatever it is, whatever increment that comes in, based on the salary schedule that they're assigned to and whatever their range and step is, which usually means how many years they've been with the company they will step, or how many promotions, etc. been given. It's what their range and step means. That gives them their base pay. In addition to that base pay, they could receive additional pay. It could be because they did a special project. It could be because they have a special degree. It could be because they have a special certificate. It could be because they've taken additional training. It could be that they actually are receiving a dock, meaning that their payroll is being docked a certain amount of money because of something that has occurred. Like maybe they've missed some time and they didn't have sick time or some other kind of time, vacation time, etc. They just missed time, and so therefore their pay needs to be docked. Or maybe the courts have ordered that they pay certain child support or something, and that needs to be docked from their monthly pay. It could also mean that they've worked extra hours, and so they're getting overtime pay or something like that. So that's what add-on means in this situation. Okay, so having gone through what the goal is and the desired functionality is, then we will go ahead and start looking at the spreadsheet. Okay, so let's check out the spreadsheet. Now, Before I get too far into checking out the spreadsheet, I want to say I think that there are two ways that we can do this. One is by writing a script, or what Excel calls macro, in other words, programming a solution, or developing a solution that is purely formula driven. Now, the benefits of doing a programming solution, I believe, is that it's more efficient in what you're able to accomplish. However, the downside of doing a programming solution is that if 5 years from now it breaks for some reason, for whatever reason it breaks, and the code no longer works, then either you have to be there to fix it, or they have to have somebody employed who knows how to do the programming, who can look at your code and fix it. Otherwise, it's done. It's going to be a waste and nobody's going to be able to use it. The benefit of doing it via just formulas is that if it breaks for whatever reason, then anybody pretty much who's familiar with Excel and formulas should be able to troubleshoot the problem and fix it. Of course, the downside is that some of those formulas can become quite complicated, and therefore could be a little bit harder to troubleshoot unless they're an expert in formulas and being able to really interpret and see what's going on. So there's some benefit and downside to both kind of solutions. Now, the first one I'm going to do is the programming version, the macro version. So if you're not interested in the programming version of the solution, I will put a link at the end of the video to the formula-based solution. Now, that is of course assuming that I can accomplish this solution via either method. So, all right, the first thing I want to do then, since this is going to be based on a macro, is come up here in the file section, and I'm going to save it as an Excel macro enabled workbook. So an XLSM as opposed to an XLSX. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this tab, and I'm going to call this ORG for original. And the reason I do that is because I may end up making changes to the format of this worksheet. I may add columns or rows, I may change information, whatever, and I want to be able to reference the original to see that I still have the basics, and that I know, like, if I'm looking at cell F7, or I'm looking at cell, let's say G11, that used to be F7, so that when I'm looking at a reference in a formula somewhere on some other spreadsheet, if that is the case, that it referred to F7, in this case F8, but now I've messed it up because I've deleted a row or a column or whatever I did. I can go back to the original sheet and see, okay, now what was that referring to, and fix myself. So I'm going to hide this, and the reason I'm going to hide it, because if I need to refer to it, I can always go back and unhide it and look at it. But if I don't hide it, then I run the risk of, when I'm on these other tabs, coming back and clicking on the original and working on it, and then going off and doing something else, and coming back and clicking on this one and working on it, and then I've got half work done on one and half work done on another, and I'm all messed up. So this helps prevent me from accidentally working on the wrong sheet. Okay, so now let's see how many tabs this spreadsheet has. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to right click, and that shows all of the tabs. Quite a lot of tabs, quite a lot of salary schedules. When I go and I look at them, I can see that, for example, the add-ons here, it's already in a table. Now, I will tell you that the original tab had tons of rows, more than this, and a whole lot more columns than this. But I got rid of a bunch of those rows and all of the columns that we're not going to be using, because it was just cluttering it up for for no reason since we weren't going to use them. Now, if when I give this project back to the person, I will give them the original add-ons tab because they may want to use all those different rows and columns. And plus, I'm guessing they downloaded this information out of their system, and all of those different columns are important in that download. So, but what I did was I did get rid of it, a lot of it, because some of it had identifying information. And the other thing is I took out all of the identifying information from the spreadsheet that I could recognize or change some information so that it wouldn't be obvious which organization this is for or what kind of organization this is for. The other thing to know is it says test employee here. There is no employee information in this sheet at all. So, and there wasn't whenever it was sent to me. So there isn't a risk of exposing employee information here. If we right click on any tab, we can see the hide, unhide. We can see the only hidden sheet is the template org that I hid. So there isn't, and I just was showing that to show there isn't a hidden employee tab that has a bunch of employee data on there that might be compromising to employees. So there's none of that on here. When we look at the other spreadsheet, the other tabs, we can see that none of them are in tables. They are just information that I guess was downloaded and it was in this format. So one of the things we want to do is we want to put all of these into tables because it makes for a more efficient operation of the spreadsheet and what we want to do. We can see that in going through all the different tabs, they all have an A through E, I think, except for the add-ons. No, even add-ons has an A through E, so they all have the same number of columns, but they don't all have the same number of rows. So we're going to have to go through and on each tab and make each of these a table. So that's going to take some time. I'm going to do that off camera. I'm going to show you how to do it in one table, and then I'm going to do the rest off camera, so you're not having to watch all of that. But to get things set up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to left click, control left click this, highlight all these tabs, and I'm going to insert rows here. Then I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to control and left click on that arrow, and I'm going to select the tabs or the add-on tab, and then I'm going to insert 4 rows here. Now, why didn't I include add-ons whenever I selected the rest of these tabs? Because while I had all the tabs selected, if I had included add-ons, it would not have let me do an insert of 4 rows because of the mixture of tables and non-tables. It just wouldn't do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I'm going to convert this to a table. First, I needed to get, that's like, a tick of mine, I guess you could call it. I need to get them to a good column width, not all spread out like they were. I'm going to highlight all these. I'm going to say format as table. I'm just going to select that table. It doesn't really matter. You choose whatever format you want to choose. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say table underscore CEO. So that's just a naming convention of mine, so that whenever I am over here in the name manager, I can see that I have a table CEO. I also have a table 1. I don't want a table 1. I want to actually have a name that I can refer to just by looking at that tab. I know that a table in that tab is going to be called TBL underscore and then the tab name. So that when I'm programming or I'm doing a formula, I don't have to go back and look and say, what was the name of that table again? I already will know what the name of the table is. And I will show you that whenever you're writing your formulas, later I'll show you when you're writing your formulas or trying to look up objects in code, whenever you have, like, say, for example, your tables all leading with a TBL or whatever naming convention you want to call it, it makes it a whole lot more efficient in writing your formulas in code to bring up just the tables whenever you type TBL in a list. Ranges, I start those names with an R to indicate it's a range. A lookup field or list, I start with LKP for lookup. So it makes it a whole lot easier for that kind of stuff. And hopefully you'll see that. I'll have an opportunity to show you that during this project. In the meantime, I'm going to come over here. This is my table 1, as you can see up here in the table name, and I'm going to rename this to say table add-ons. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add a column, and I'm going to call it key. And the formula here is going to be row and column. It gives me this little pop-up here, autocorrect options, and it says, basically it's saying, hey, I copied that formula for you in all the rows in this column because I figured that's what you wanted to do. If you want me not to do that, tell me. Well, I want it to do that, so that's good. Now, why do we have this key field? When we come back here and we look at range and step, which, by the way, there is no range and step. On all these, it's row and column. So I don't know which is row and which is range and which is step. I have no idea. But it doesn't really matter anyway. Because I'm going to create this key which combines your row and column. And as long as we're treating it the same here, which I will show you later again, we'll use that to look up the row that we want in the table based upon this key. And that is more efficient than trying to come up with a formula that says, hey, find this row and then find this column. And then you're nesting and coming up with these complicated formulas to get to the row of the table you want. It's better just to create this key. Now, another thing to remember is that whenever you're downloading data from a financial system or whatever system, could be off a table off the web, etc., and you're going to want to be able to then use that data, but it doesn't have all of the information you need, or the data isn't broken down in the way that you need it, you can always create additional columns and create those data fields you need. As an example, I want a key column, and so I just create it. If I wanted to say I wanted the first 3 digits as a salary range, I can create another column and use a function to get just the first 3 digits of the salary range. If there was a name, I could get the first name and last name and separate those, etc., etc. So just know that when you look at a data set, you might think, oh, well, it doesn't have the information in such a way that I can really use it in an efficient way to accomplish the task I want to accomplish. I can't use it. I give up. No, keep in mind, you can split and create the columns and the data that you need. All right, so there you have it. A lot of blah blahing for explaining that. So one of the things that can happen is whenever it comes time for me to download the data and paste it back in here, that I'm going to delete all of this information. And it does leave this one row here, but notice this formula is gone. Well, we don't want someone to lose that formula if they don't know formulas. They never bothered to see what that formula was. And so if they accidentally lose that formula, we want to be able for them to get that formula back. So in order to help that out, and that's one of the reasons I added 4 rows here at the top, is I'm going to say formula in column key is, and then I'm going to come over here, I'm going to highlight this, do Control-C for copy, escape. I'm going to come in here, click in here, and do Control-V for paste. And then that way, if this formula is lost, all I got to do is come in here and say, copy that, Control-C, escape, come in here, Control-V, enter. And if these weren't here, it would auto-populate. So that's what we wanted to do there. And so now we're going to do that for all of the other salary schedules. And so I'm going to do that offline. And and so you're not having to sit here and watch me do all that boring work. And whenever that's done, we'll come back. So see you on the other side. Okay, we are back. As you can see, I have gone through and I have created all of these as tables. We can verify that by seeing that there's all the tables now. Now, there's a couple things I noticed that could cause problems in the future, and that's the inconsistent naming of some of these tabs. For example, this one is called, there's a space whenever you go to it, so I'm going to go to it. I'm going to right click here and go there. So you can see that this is CRT1C. This is CRT space 1B. CRT no space 1A. So what that will probably do in the future is prompt somebody to say, you know what, that's not consistent. So I'm going to change one of these or two. I'm going to change this tab name to not have a space, or I'm going to change these two tab names to have a space. And then it's going to break the code. It will break the code based upon the solution that we're going to come up with. So we'll have to make sure we make a comment about that. But you know, it won't be done on purpose. What will happen is somebody who's probably new, they have a tick that they can't stand this kind of inconsistency, and so they're going to fix it. And they're not going to ask their boss, who gives them this spreadsheet and tells them to use it, whether or not they can fix it. They're just going to fix it, and it'll break, and then they'll be like, well, I don't know what I did. And it'll be such an obscure change that as people try to troubleshoot it, it's going to be hard to find that. The other thing to note is that when we look at the table name here, so I've got TBL underscore CRT1C. That's the naming format I talked about earlier. But here, because there's a space, that is a TBL underscore CRT underscore 1B. So that's how we handle that. And then there's one over here that has a dash. Well, you can't use a dash in a range name or a table name. And so in that instance, what I've done is I have put an underscore. That's just something you'll have to remember. I don't know why this is a dash as opposed to just a space, but it could be that is the way that the salary schedule is named. It could be that that's the way all of these salary schedules are named, including this inconsistent naming here. And they want the tabs to absolutely reflect the name of the salary schedule as it is in the system. Okay, so now having gone through all that, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to control and click here. I'm going to add a key column here. And the formula is that, and column, just like before, right? Row and column, yes. And so we will then copy this, paste it here. And now I'm going to control left click here, select all of these, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to do key. Okay, so it won't let me add a column to all these tables at one time. So that's all right. We'll delete that. I'll come back here. I'm going to copy this. Control left click, select all these, and I'm going to paste it. Don't do the right mouse key, it's just easier to do Control V. And so now you'll see, Control left click, escape. You'll see that it is the same in all of these. Now what I have to do is I have to go in and add the key column to all these tables, which you don't necessarily want to see me do all that. So I again will do that off camera, and we'll come back whenever I am done with that task. Okay, we are back. I've added the key column to every one of these tables. So while there isn't that translation, the direct translation from range step to row column, they have given us the ability to decipher what is what. And we look at, they have the salary schedule here as an example and arrange in steps. So if I go to, so if I right click down here and I go to class H, which I'm guessing is that, so they're not even using, okay, row 15, well, so row, the 15 is in the row column. So I come back here, and just for our note, I'm going to type this in, equals row, and this equals column, so that we can keep that straight. Okay, so far what we've done is we have put all of this data into a table format. We have inserted 4 rows up here. We've added a key column that combines the row and column values together. And you can see here, so that you're not just seeing the ones for number example, but it has this here. Unfortunately, it looks like we have some spaces here. That's not good. So we might end up having to change the formula. We'll see, but I'm guessing we will, to strip out those spaces. And we'll need to do that here in the key column, not over here, because every time that they download this information and paste it into this table, it's going, so if we would, so for example, what I mean by where I'm getting at is, if we went through here and we changed, if we strip out all of the spaces in this column, the next time they come in and do a download and paste the data in here, it's going to re-establish all of those spaces. So we can't deal with it in here. We have to deal with it over here. And more than likely what we're going to have to end up doing is stripping out this leading space here in this key column. So we may not have to do that, but we may. And if we do, then I will show you how to do that. So we've converted all these to table. We've added this note appear on all of the tabs so that if this formula accidentally gets erased, they'll know how to put it back in. We haven't done anything else, but we are now set up. We can actually start doing some coding. We can actually move to our next step of setting up some systems that will support our coding that we need to do before we get to the coding. So that's going to be in part 2. This is it for part 1. Don't want to go too long, and I will see you in part 2. Thank you, everybody, and have a great, fantastic day.